Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Welcome, everybody. It's season 2, episode 1 of A-rated B movies and B-rated A movies. I am Tom Connors. With me, of course, is my partner in crime, Script Doctor. How you doing?
I'm doing well on this spooky weekend leading up to Halloween.
Yeah, and we have a great movie to talk about. That's right, The Frighteners with Michael J. Fox, directed by Peter Jackson himself. A movie with a lot of history, and we're going to get into that as we get rolling here. And hopefully it's a favorite of all yours out there. Hopefully you've seen the movie, because there will be spoilers.
Yeah, I mean, the other part
here.
to note, it's not just directed by Peter Jackson and produced by Zemeckis, it's also written by Peter Jackson and his wife Fran Walsh. This is one of the earlier scripts that they wrote in the 90s.
Yeah, they actually, some background, and we might as well start there. Well, first, let's say hello to everybody.
Yeah,
we got Jedi Bill here. We got Wade Chadwick. We got Malachi D. Wildman. Sorry, I screwed that one up. Cool Gamer. Picasso's here. We got a few people. Hit that like button. Gonzalo Bergali. Share out the link. Let everybody know that we're live. So, yeah, we're back for a second season. It's been long enough between shows. I'm like, fuck it. We're going to do a season 2. Like we never have seasons. Now we do. Hello, Jackal's Corner and KB. Read by Nature. I see here. Cool Gamer. Nice to see you. Thank you for being here, guys. But yeah, some background on this. This story came to Peter Jackson and Fran Walsh while they were actually working on Heavenly Creatures, believe it or not. They were on, they would take like breaks. Like when they were in the midst of working on it, they would just go for walks and just get away from everything. And while they were on their walks, they were talking about this idea about basically like a paranormal, quote unquote, investigator who actually worked with the ghosts, kind of like Ghostbusters that work with the ghost, kind of thing.
And that was kind of with each other.
Yeah, coordinated. Yeah, that was kind of the germ of the idea. But basically, the other part of it was Peter actually saw a ghost, and he couldn't believe it. He was at Fran's house. I believe this was before they were married.
Yeah, about a year or two before they were married.
Yeah, and he was laying in bed. I can't remember if he was reading a book or something he was doing. And all of a sudden he saw something come across the room. And at first he said it was just, it caught him by surprise, but he wasn't scared at first. But then when he realized it was a ghost, he like freaked out. He's like, the hair stood up on his arms, and you got that pounding in your chest, and he couldn't even like breathe kind of thing. And it had this screaming face. It was a lady with a screaming face, he said. And so after the ghost was gone, he hollered to Fran, who was in the other room, and he called her in, and he's like, I just seen something I can't believe. And she's like, oh, is it the screaming lady? So from there, and then that other part kind of just germinated into this idea of what the Frighteners became. And also they were under at that time, after Heavenly Creatures and everything like that, they really kind of became the kids in Hollywood as far as the indie scene. But Peter, of course, was more well known for horror. So New Line had tapped him. They wanted him to work on either Nightmare on Elm Street, or he actually turned down Leatherface and some other projects they had brought to him. So like there was people who were interested in working with him, and Robert Zemeckis had said, how would you like to work on Tales from the Crypt? Have you got any scary stories? And he's like, actually, we do. It's called The Frighteners. And I guess the name was something that came to him right away. And that's something I got to ask you about. I'm not a big fan of the title. Are you?
I would be if the story was more geared to the con that Michael J. Fox's Bannister character is doing, where he's sending his ghost friends to frighten people in their homes and then, exorcise them out with his obvious gimmicks. That would have made more sense. However, that's not really what this movie is about, because all Peter Jackson and Friend had at the time was a treatment that they gave to their talent agent, and it got into Zemeckis' hands, and he loved it, and that's where he said, "Hey, I'm gonna hire you to write this for our Tales of the Crypt feature film series that he was co-producing at the time."
And that's the problem. There's some convolution in the history. See, Peter's version on like the Blu-ray and other places he's told is a very sanitized version of that. If you go to the Bordello of Blood Blu-ray and actually seek out some history on this, that version is probably more right. Because basically they say that it started as it was going to be an episode, but they thought it was so good that it should be a movie of its own. That's not quite true. Okay.
No.
From the moment of its inception, it was meant to be one of the Tales from the Crypt films. In fact, it was meant to be the second one. But I think between the time it was taking them to rewrite it and everything like that, it got pushed to the third film. But in the meantime, what had happened was Bordello of Blood got pushed up and flopped. And they're like, fuck, we do not need another Tales from the Crypt movie flopping. Demon Knight did not do great, and Bordello of Blood completely flopped. So they're like, what do we do now? And Zemeckis believed in the Frighteners enough to where he's like, I think we can make this on its own.
Yeah, they don't need the brand recognition to drive an audience.
Yes, they thought at that time they didn't need it as long as they made it a PG-13. And this is important because Peter Jackson shot the film as a PG-13 movie. And he said flat out, if he'd have known he was going to get slapped like he did around by the MPAA, he would have shot an R-rated movie because it ended up being an R-rated movie. Because Script had to remind me of that because the other day when we first brought it up, I'm like, that's PG-13, isn't it? And he's like, no, it's R. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, because it barely is rated R. And that's what bothers me is rewatching it again just recently for this show. I was like, I still don't see how the MPAA was so tough on this movie.
I think they conflated the ghost aspect because you barely get the R rating just with the flashbacks to the hospital scene that Michael J. Fox is visualizing in general, like the mass murder of the 12.
Believe it or not, the thing that he said the MPA was hung up on most was Dee Wallace shooting the gun. Believe it or not, they said it was the thing that really stuck out to them was her having the shotgun, and not only that, and this is reminiscent of true romance. I don't know if I remember telling you about this, but they made the MPAA gave them an NC-17 not because of all the other violence in the movie, but it was because Patricia Arquette's character went apeshit nuts on her assaulter in the film. That was the part they had the problem with. So here, similarly, again, you have a woman with a gun, so they had a problem with that, first of all. Secondly, they didn't like how many times she shoots through the door. Like, she's like, Peter's like, I didn't know they had such a problem with doors in the MPAA.
Well, they're supposed to protect you. That's why they have locks.
He's like, we can't have so many shotgun blasts through the door. He's like, what the fuck? So anyway, so that's a little bit of ahead of ourselves. So basically, though, they're like, okay, so we're gonna do this thing, but it's not gonna be Tales from the Crypt, because they even thought about doing it as a Tales from the Crypt spin-off show on its own. Actually, I don't know if you knew this or not, but we were gonna have
kind of tell just with the way
the premise,
the way it is shot. It's something that you would have seen because I think memory serves. I don't know if I saw it because I didn't have HBO Direct in Canada. We had like the movie channel and a bunch of like parallels, but I think Tales of the Crypt was on the HBO side of things back in the day, right? Because it was Universal produced.
Universal produced it, but I think it's a co-ownership because I think Warner actually released the show, but Universal bought the rights to the movies, so it's like a convoluted thing.
Because I remember, like, you go to Tales of the Crypt, you get the HBO, the static, and then HBO with the symbol, and then you go to the horror Tales of the Crypt show for their specials. But the way that the Frighteners, and it's also very similar to Bordello of Blood, they feel like the cinematography is very it's similar enough to the point where you're like, I could see them shooting this and thinking it was probably going to be on television and not in theaters initially because of the way that they frame some of the close-up shots.
Maybe Bordello, but I'm not so sure about the Frighteners.
Because the Frighteners very much looks like it was shot for television from my perspective.
I don't see that so much. I only other than just because of the CGI at the time was real in its infancy. Mm-hmm. And he was doing a lot of stuff then that now we'd be able to do on your own home computer. But like, we got to remember, this is only a couple of years removed from Jurassic Park. And he shot a lot of it in open 35 so they could do the CGI. That I know. But then he cropped it off for the widescreen. But That part I don't know about. As far as I know, it was always meant to be a feature film when he was shooting it, because he flat out said he was pissed that he went through so much trouble when he shot a PG-13 movie only to get slapped with an R rating. So then the only
Yeah.
thing he could do when he went back, he's like, well, now that we know we're going to get an R rating no matter what, because they still had a few effect shots to finish, he's like, we got like 3 weeks. What can we do to change something to make it worth getting the R rating? Well, the only thing he got to do was blow off the head of Damers, or how do you say his
Yeah,
name?
Damer's head is,
Yeah.
and that was decently well done because you almost don't register the severed neckline right away because they.
Yeah. Because in the original version, he just shoots him in the chest, which is funny because the MPA didn't have a problem with that. So that's the version that's in the TV version, of course. But yeah, so like he was very upset about that. And again, that's the other reason why I'm not so sure. This one, maybe Bordello, they may have thought about it, but this one I'm not so sure because I know they sunk a ton of money into this movie.
26 million.
Yeah, and in fact, they pushed it because it was originally meant for a Halloween release, and they pushed it to summer to Peter's chagrin because they're like, we have a shit ton of shots left to do. And we thought we had like 8 months to do them in, and now we've only got 6. Or whatever it was, 7 months or less than that, 5 months or whatever it was. They lost like 3 months of whatever it was in the end, and they're like, shit. Because again, like they had tons and tons, because all the ghost effects were done with some kind of CGI tweaking, and they decided in the midst of shooting, because you guys got to understand, they were floating by the seat of their pants shooting this movie, and Peter Jackson said that this is one of the few times he didn't even have everything storyboarded out because the story changed so often. In fact, when he picked up the novelization for the movie, he didn't realize they used an earlier version of the script, and he was terrified because it wasn't the same story still anymore. He's like, so many things had changed. So I'm curious to get my hands on that book and see how different the earlier versions were.
Likewise, because you can tell from the way the pacing of the story is and how quickly, because everything happens about the first 20 minutes takes place over about 3 or 4 days, and then the rest of the movie takes place in a single night, and it's very compressed. Yeah.
So like him and Peter and Fran reworked that script a number of times, even during shooting.
Yes,
because Michael J. Fox joked about how they ran out of colors in the script
for all the changes of pages. Yeah,
for all the day changes. Yeah. And they would let Shy McBride, because that's the thing is, let's get to the casting while we're at it, because Michael J. Fox, they said that they kind of had somebody like him in mind to begin with, because they said that Fran and him like to have an actor or actress in mind so they can find a voice. And I'm sure that's something you might do when you write too, where you may not necessarily think that person's going to get the job, but you just need a voice to write to, and I can understand that.
Yeah, that's something where you've got a sense of the story, but maybe you just haven't figured out the character yet. So you're like, okay, well, what type of actor will help me bridge the outcome I'm looking for with the character, with the little fragments of things that I have, and you just pick an actor that you think would fit that, and you just write to that. And that usually solves a number of problems, because about halfway through the writing process, you find your character's voice, you finish off the script, you go back, and then you just match up all the stuff that you were doing to try and find that voice to the voice you ended up with, and it ends up becoming its own type of thing. And this is also a role that is very different for Michael J. Fox. He doesn't play roles like this before, or has played roles like this before.
Not normally, yeah. He's actually more of a, clearly, like, I don't even know if they never really said who they had in mind originally, but I can imagine it wasn't Michael J. Fox. It was clearly written for somebody like a Mickey Rourke, or
Bruce Willis would have done it.
Yeah, Bruce Willis type, somebody who you can see being that cocky, Eddie Valiant type. I'm run down, I'm sick of life. He was a narcissist before his wife died. Now that he's got to deal with all these other things in life, he's clearly just used it for all he can, not really used it in any useful way anyway. He's just
he's kind of floating around, and it's not until after the funeral, the first funeral, I think, he finds out from the bank, he needs $15,000 to hold on to the house that is his last memory of his wife.
Really, yeah.
And we don't even learn that till much later on. So you can see a lot of the fractured story elements in here of them, of Peter and Fran just trying to make this thing work, even though you could tell they probably had a different method of narrating this story initially that they had to change to just to get things moving a bit more. Because
Yeah,
there's a lot of exposition. There's
there
you
is.
have the journalist basically just doing a voiceover, but they try to hide it by him reading the article to his editor. Then you have the VHS tape that Lucy's watching of the Bartlett killings. It's all just it's also to get through stuff as quickly as possible
Yeah.
because whatever ideas they had initially weren't, I guess, working at the time in their favor, and they were trying to
Yeah.
play around with the horror mystery aspect of things. Like, it felt like they had a little bit of inspiration from Friday the 13th, where they just wanted that twist at the end where, oh, it's not who you think it is.
Yeah, that's what's funny about the twist is you almost should see it coming from a mile away, right? He telegraphs it so well, and you're just like, he got me. You're like, because
For a
you
while he does, but the biggest, I think, duck blind to it is the fact that the character, when we first meet them, is being attacked by this ghost, and it's
that's a
but
good
you
red herring right there. Yeah.
yeah, it's either red herring. I mean, I guess they're trying to imply that, oh, this is how they flirt, but it
They
does. I
never
don't think it
say, but
landed
you want
well.
to know what I think is going on? I think I think that he's gonna go kill her mom, and she's trying to stop him is what it is. I could be wrong, but like you're right, because it doesn't, because otherwise that's the only scene that doesn't make sense unless you try to imply some kind of logic to it later on down the road, like that, like you just said, either it's their way of flirting, which it could be, because there is
Because
that
you get
deleted.
a reverse of that in the kitchen where she's got the knife and she's stabbing
I was
his
just gonna
ghost.
say, but that only
Yeah.
makes sense in the director's cut because that's not in the theatrical version, and that's what's funny is finally seeing this director's cut. I mean,
Mhm.
I surmised a lot of this stuff before, but you finally kind of get a little bit more insight than you did not tons, but just a little bit more insight.
I mean, you get like what 10 minutes more in the director's cut.
Roughly 10 or 15 minutes, but a lot of it's little things, and the big parts are just some of the stuff's with the ghosts in the beginning. And this is what you're talking about, where like, it seems like this is the stuff that got sacrificed the most, and the judge got sacrificed quite a bit.
Yeah.
As far as like the intro, there's a lot of stuff, a lot more stuff with the ghosts that got just little bits and pieces that got added. Like they were fucking around with things to scare people with, and they decided to make like a wraith looking thing, and Michael J. Fox is like, it's not funny, like,
Yeah.
because they don't get it yet, and he's already seen it and whatnot. But like that's the thing is because he's seen it with his wife or whatever, and they didn't realize that. But see, I can see him cutting that out for a reason. And then, like I said, there's a little bit more with the judge. You kind of get a little bit more of him talking about, retiring and having a plot and all that kind of stuff. A little bit more there in
His
depth.
ectoplasm's drying up.
Yeah. Um, and then in the director's cut, you also get a little bit more about Dahmer's character, however you say his name.
Dammers, yeah, basically Jeffrey
Dammers.
Combs,
Jeffrey Combs, yeah.
who plays it brilliantly.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Like again, talking about the cast, like Michael J. Fox was inspired, but I want to talk about really inspired was Jeffrey Combs. Like of all fucking people, he chews the scenery so well, and this character is almost like 100% him. Like and this is what I was talking about with Peter. Like when he in the rewriting of a lot of these characters, that's why Shy McBride took the job, because at first he's like, there's nothing here on the page, man. I don't get it. He's like, that's why I want you guys. I need somebody who can come in and help us come up with stuff and improvise and, and stuff like that. And so like Shy said, when they come in and they're during their audition, or during the script reading, when they were improvising, here's Peter writing down all the shit. Next thing you know, it's in the script.
Yeah.
So like, his just like throwing shit out there. And for those who may not know, Shy McBride, of course, is a classic comedian, and you can come up with shit on the fly pretty easily, and he does have a lot of really great one-liners in this film. And then his partner, I can't remember the guy's name, Peter Dobson, I think it is, or something. No, that's the other guy that dies.
His
Stewart Fife, Jim Fife.
Jim Fife, yeah.
Like he's really good too, because he's good to play off of as far as the straight guy. And then of course you got the judge played by John Astin perfectly. And of course, Peter said he cast him because he wanted the eyes were the most important thing. And John Astin has very expressive eyes.
Mhm.
especially considering how much makeup he was going to be under. And then of
And he had
course
no
D,
lips.
yeah, yeah, and of course D Wallace. I mean, that was mainly to sell the mystery, because he said I had to get somebody who we normally see in not in this role, and we've never seen, as far as I can remember up to this point, D Wallace in a villain role. And I remember when it happened, I'm like, oh wow, that's quite a twist, because you don't expect her, and that's part
Yeah,
of what I think sells it.
it is what sells it because she had this brand behind her of I'm about the mother character, the innocent character, the one that has to save her family, so to speak. And now she's in the victim side of things. She's it's kind of funny. She's being held at home by her mother, who coincidentally has the same haircut that Gary Oldman has in Bram Stoker's Dracula. Um, I don't. I wonder if that was intentional because didn't Bram Stoker's Dracula come out in '95?
I think it was a little earlier than that, but yeah,
But yeah, like
more
she has
like
the same
92 or
part. It's
3.
the
Yeah.
white, and it's back there, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting style. Um, and she's played as this victim, and the actor that they got to play the younger version of her
Looks
um,
just like her.
looks just like her in that. But it's cool because you have these two characters um, in D Wallace and freaking creepy Jake Busey
Yeah.
playing basically serial killer enthusiasts who want to get their names among the greats and beyond them at a point, and that's
Yeah.
their entire motivation.
Yeah, because they wanted to beat the scores of the biggest mass murders at the time, which is, again, like, you should see it coming from a mile away what's going on. But Peter does a great job, and that's another thing that gets edited out. And I think that I'm kind of surprised, because the judge is convinced that it's a Grim Reaper. Like, all that bit is cut out. Like, he keeps saying it throughout. He's like,
It's the real death, yeah, doing it.
yeah, he's like, he's like, death has come to this little town. He goes, that's the soul collector. That kind of a thing. Because
Yeah, and then you
there's
get
like,
something at the very end with the sheriff, who's played by oh crap, what the heck's his name? He's been Troy
oh,
Evans. Troy Evans
Troy
plays
Evans,
Sheriff
yeah,
Perry, and he's like, yeah, when we searched the house, we had a whole bunch of Ouija boards, and it looks like I guess that's how she
a
got
direct
Bartlett out
line.
of hell. She summoned him.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing, because you had asked me just before the show what happened to the judge, because as you guys remember, he just kind of disappears in the story.
Yeah, right
Uh,
after he nails the dead Egyptian corpse,
and
and
gets
then
cut in
he just
half.
gets cut in half. He's
Well,
not
actually,
back
he
anymore.
hangs around for a little while, but they had to cut him out because it just was that was more or less for time. But I wish they had left it in, because script is right. It does leave some plot holes. I think you're just kind of left to believe that he just died and went to the other side again, or whatever, or however, like the other guys do when they get killed,
Yeah,
re-killed, or whatever you want to call it. But what happens is he ends up deciding he's waddling around as half of himself, and they shot a bunch of this stuff for it. They never finished it all. That's why it's not in the director's cut. But he decides he's going to go back up to the cemetery. And when Michael J. Fox is actually going through the cemetery, he runs into him again, and he actually helps him with the wraith. It all gets cut out though. It's in between the shots of where he takes out the wraith with the machine guns, and just before that. So Judge actually gets out and helps him a little bit more, and then he goes back to his grave. And at the very end of the movie, this is the part that gets cut out, and this is your answer to your question. He's still alive. He comes up and he goes, well, it seems that me and my what does he call his second half? I forgot. Shit. His vitals. It's like, me and my vitals are going separate ways. He's going west and I'm going east. And he's riding the dog.
yeah, because the dog disappears right after that first scene.
Yeah, so him and Rustler taking off the other direction, and his other half is going the other way. So they're still around, just moving along, I guess. That was in between, just before the sheriff showed up, though. At the very end, when there's hanging out,
Where where the bank has, I guess, repossessed the home and is demolishing it, and he's with the doctor now. That's another part that this movie loses, is it loses the inciting incident and the chemistry for these two characters liking each other, because it's not there at all. Like,
well,
they
that's
just
the
behave
thing.
like they like each other because the story wants them to, because they're missing that one point. Because Bannister comes in, he kind of quote unquote saves the home from the haunting, and she's just kind of being nice and respectful to the fact that this guy's here to help them. But I mean, as soon as, and that's the last time she sees him until the funeral where her husband's dead. And now she's just kind of like really into him, but at the same time wanting to find out if Ray's to like got any
Well,
messages for her.
I think you're right, but I also disagree slightly because I think what we're supposed to assume is him falling for her and him fall and vice versa is in that scene in the restaurant. Because at first, he's clearly still playing the game, and then he realizes he has feelings for her,
Yeah,
especially once he realizes she's really getting into this. And even
which
though
is
he
weird
know,
because it's literally been a day that her husband's been dead.
yeah, I know, but like that's the thing is she's not getting into him so much. But that's the thing is I think her feelings for him grow over time as she realizes that she believes him, but nobody else does. And then just everything that he goes through up to that point. And you're right. And this is where Fran probably could have come in and said something. And maybe she did, and maybe it just got poo-pooed down. But and said that, we really got to kind of build up this love affair. Even though there supposedly has been some time between, the climax and that final scene we have. But yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with you
But
to
like
a
she
point.
kisses him as soon as he comes back. She
Yeah.
resurrects him back from the brink of death, and then her fellow doctor, the person that she works for, is there to kind of like take care of Michael J. Fox while um, she leaves for some reason. I can't remember why.
When he's
Uh,
under?
no. After she comes back and saves him. Oh right, he goes. Yeah, he Michael J. Fox says he didn't get the guy, but it has to do with the house, and so she goes to rescue Dee Wallace's character, and then
Yeah.
that's the twist that Dee Wallace is in on it.
Yeah. Or no, he realizes it's Charlie Bartlett. That's why.
Yeah, it's Charlie Bartlett. Yeah,
Yeah, because he goes, "Who are you?" And he throws the face against the
the stone, and it just
stone.
morphs back into, into that creepy Busey smile.
Yeah, because I was gonna say because she got pulled away the first time because of Donners because he
Yeah,
come in and
and you
yeah.
get that really morbid scene where, like, he's talking about all the cults he was into, and he's lost his nipples. Like they were chopped off and cauterized.
Yeah, well, this is sad. This is one of the sadder bits that gets lost from the film because I think it really helps explain to you how nuts this guy really is. I mean, we get an idea in the original version, but like here, the reason Peter said he cut it out is people were confused in the test screenings. He said they saw the haircut and they saw the Nazi insignia on his hand, and they automatically went to, "Is this guy a Nazi?" He's like, all the cards kept coming back. "Is this guy a Nazi? Question mark. Is this guy?" Like,
No, but like when you listen to what he says, he's like he's part of the
He's-
occults. Like even the sheriff says, yeah, he's been undercover a number of times, so he's a little eccentric.
he didn't, because here's the thing is they said early on another reason why they had a lot of these actors working on the script and they kept rewriting is, and this is probably another reason why the original version of the story that's in the book might be, I'd have to check it out to see one of the reasons, if this is one of the reasons why. We said a lot of colloquialisms and words and phrases and stuff that were in the original script were all Kiwi. so so they needed to Americanize it. And that's where I'm curious about the title. If maybe that's a word they use more often down there, because we use it in the term you scared somebody, you're scaring me.
Yeah.
Like you're putting the frighteners on people, the frightening on people. They keep saying it like that in the movie, right? So I wonder if that's maybe just a colloquialism that's different there, because they said that they had to go through and basically Americanize the script because it was chock full of shit that they didn't understand. Just little colloquialisms and things. So like I'm curious if that's part of that reasoning or what, but yeah, because that's where Shy McBride and Michael J. Fox and all those guys had to basically rewrite their own dialogue. So yeah, but no, it's one of those things where with the cast, it was a brilliantly done. Now Trini Alvarado, who plays Lucy in it, like I think you're right. Like, not just I think part of it might just be their chemistry. I just don't think they really have the chemistry that
You
Michael
didn't
J.
feel any
Fox usually
sparks.
has.
No,
Yeah,
that's for
I think
sure.
that's more so the issue because, and again, it's nothing to the actress's fault. It's just between those two, they just didn't seem to have it. I don't know what it was.
I don't. I think that's actually kind of a running thing with Michael J. Fox because I of all the movies I've seen him in, I've seen him in a lot. Even like into the Secret of My Success, I don't see the chemistry with him and the women that he acts opposite of.
Only in Doc Hollywood, really.
Maybe, yeah. But I think
That
that's
one
just
I'll make
because,
an argument for, but outside of that,
yeah,
I don't disagree with you. Because even for Love or Money, even though I like that movie, I still don't see what he sees in her, kind of thing. Like, yeah,
yeah. I think it's not there, and I think that goes to Michael J. Fox's level of commitment of professionalism, where you know, to counter what some of the stuff that Paul Chatos said on another stream. Yeah, sometimes actors, they get so involved in their characters, they actually believe the chemistry that they're trying to achieve. And I don't think Michael J. Fox is able to do that. And I think that's to his character as a person who's like, I know this is pretend, I know this is a job type of thing.
yeah. I
And
mean, he's been with his wife for quite a few years. That could be part of it too. Is it's just hard for him to
yeah, like
separate that.
he can't he could probably mimic the words, but he probably can't mimic the authenticity of it.
Yeah,
And I have
and
no
even
problem with that part because it shows that he cares more about his family than he does
yeah,
about.
yeah, no, totally. And I see that with certain actors sometimes, like Ralph Macchio is another one. Like you can totally see that in Karate Kid 3, obviously, and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And his wife on the show is so much like his real life wife. That's probably one of the reasons why. But I will also argue he did have decent chemistry with Nancy Travis and Greedy. So maybe she would have been better for this role, perhaps. I mean, she's very
Oh
similar
yeah.
looking, so
Yeah,
like
yeah.
maybe. And again, nothing wrong with the actress. It's just I don't know. You're right. I do agree they didn't quite have that spark, but it could be just Michael too at the same time. But there's only a few actresses he's ever been able to really, and Nancy's one of them, and then the chick from Doc Hollywood. She's escaping my. God, I can't think
Yeah,
of
I
it. But
can't
anyway,
remember.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
like that's the thing. Because this was the movie that this is the last Michael J. Fox's performances for two reasons. The first is obviously he was worried about his Parkinson's, and the second is that he hated the fact that he was so far away from his family and home doing this in New Zealand.
yeah. This
Um,
was the last of the stretch. Well, plus he knew he was sick, and this is just before he told everybody that he was sick too,
yeah,
because he had
that
done
didn't
like
come out
4 or
until
5
about two
films
years
in a
later, I
row.
think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then he did. Was he on Spin City already by then?
He quit the feature films to go back to television, and Spin City was the first series that he got, and
I can't
that's what he
remember if he
stayed
was
with.
on already when he told everybody or not. That's what I was trying
He
to
was no,
think.
he was already on Spin City when he came out with
Okay, so yeah,
Parkinson's.
he went right from this then to Spin City. So yeah, so because of all of his movies, unfortunately, this one I think lost the most money because after Back to the Future and Doc Hollywood was the only one he really had that was a hit. Uh,
Yeah,
the rest kind of tumbled and
the
fell.
rest were considered medium box office successes. I think this one, it only made back about 26 million at the worldwide box office, so they didn't even break even
No,
financially for that time back in those days.
no,
Um,
this movie is the reason why Peter Jackson didn't get to do King Kong right away.
yeah, he needed to work on a couple more things.
Because he was going to go
Um,
right from this into King Kong until this flopped, and then Universal's like, "Yeah, we're not going to do that."
yeah, yeah, sorry, pretty much.
But
Um,
no, so he got the cast together, like you said. They shot this down in New Zealand, which is not abnormal for Peter Jackson. That's what he likes to do. Um, but yeah, we were talking a little bit more about the deleted scenes. We got through most of those already. But yeah, the Dahmer scene I think is really important. We were talking about that because he you get to learn that he was with his first case was with the Manson family, and then he's basically been doing this for the last 20 years, and
for
he's
about
never
20
been
years, he spent 3 years drinking goat's blood
yeah,
undercover as a
he's
sort
never
of,
been deprogrammed. That's the problem. So
yeah.
like he's a
He's
he's
never had
a
that opportunity. He went from one assignment to the next right away.
yeah, it
Uh,
was like this guy's nuts. But no, I don't know if anybody could have played this role other than Jeffrey Combs because he
I think
is
this is the role that got him cast as the Question in the cartoon series for Justice League.
probably
Because everything he does, he talks about specific details, like when he recounts the Bannister,
he
Mrs.
does a very
Bannister's death.
similar voice too. Yeah.
Well, it's his voice. It's just
Well, that's not what he
it's
talks like in
just
real life, really.
no, it's not. But it's like it's just that type of it's the cadence that he brings to it.
Exactly. Because like
The
I've
level
talked
of
to him in real life, and he's really kind of soft spoken, and
yeah. But
But
it's
that
just so much fun because he goes through all the
voice.
details like a conspiracy theorist. And he talks about like, we'll never find Bannister. He's too smart for that. And as he's walking into the station.
Third and Garrett in the 33rd. Three. He's just like going off, and the sheriff's like, Doc. Like, or
I think
not
the other
Doc.
part too is when he's talking about the like we got Bannister in prison, and then this other sheriff is like, we don't have any forensic evidence to keep him here.
Yeah.
He's like, it'll be a suicide, sheriff. I've seen it 100 times.
Yeah. You're trying to do it right now, aren't you?
Yeah. Oh god, just some of the stuff that's like he is the wrench in the cogs in this movie.
Yes.
Which is fantastic because everything he does is always the wrong thing to help solve the
Which is funny because
problem.
normally I would not like a character like this. This is usually the character in a film. Like, I'm like, you don't need him. You know what I mean? Especially with all this other shit going on. But you almost kind of do, right? Because you need a character because the sheriff, I love this little town, right? It's basically Mayberry. Right?
Yeah.
Because the sheriff is like Andy Taylor. He he doesn't necessarily believe Michael J. Fox, but he knows he's mostly harmless.
And that he's a good guy. He's dealing with the loss of his wife. He doesn't cause any actual trouble, aside from the fact that he doesn't know how to drive and just creates tons of property damage.
But you can also tell, and that's why I love that bit at the end, because that kind of gives you a little insight, because you're like, oh, maybe he does kind of believe in this stuff a little bit. That's why he always kind of gave him the benefit of the doubt, even though he knew he was a bit of a shyster as far as the,
See, that was one of my things that popped up, and just to go back a little bit in the when he's like, I need $15,000, and then they find the rich person's home. And they start floating the babies around, and as he gets in there to do his shtick, the two ghosts are just sitting on the couch saying, yeah, you can't get away with it because there's that newspaper article that he's a fraud. And I'm just thinking, but he's got two actual ghosts that do stuff. And why can't the baby still be levitating? He's like, what, you calling me a fraud? How's your child floating there, huh? He just moves his hand around it, and it's like, there's something that he could have fought harder for to try and do, but he just gave up because, and she and the wife who was in the house, the I guess the heiress, if you will, was like so nonchalant about it after the fact. It boggled my mind. Like, how did they make that logical leap that yes, just because the newspaper said he's a fraud and I'm seeing my children float by themselves?
I think part of that is either A, like they needed to get past some story point there, which is very likely, and they just figured this is the easiest, quickest way we can get through here. And they probably had to chop a bunch out. Maybe that's where it's at. The other side of it, it could just be that I think Frank knows that he's doing wrong. So like even when he like with the scene with Lucy, right? And then like even there when he gets busted, he's just like, fuck it, I'm not gonna push this, kind of thing. And then because like at the end, you even have a thing where he's like, you think I'm a good guy? You think I'm telling the truth? And it's all bullshit, go home. Go home, Lucy.
Yeah, well, he's lying to save her from
exactly
whatever.
My point. And that's what I'm saying is that's kind of his whole journey in this movie is from that narcissistic person he was. And that's why that basketball court is a very important point in the film. And especially when she walks out there and she sees the basketball court, which supports the story she heard, but also she sees now that it's bloomed into this garden that his wife wanted all that time anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's kind of a statement being said there is that, and that's her, I think at that moment, realizing that even though he is this horrible thing that everybody kept saying he was, he's become a much better person now. And through her, that's where he's finding that, through his care for her. And that's where I said, yeah, it's there, but because of their chemistry, I can see where you're saying it's like, yeah, I don't quite see it.
It's not even just the chemistry. Like, we're missing that one extra beat for him.
Could be.
To care for her. Like, aside from the fact that she's obviously very attractive.
But yeah, like, I see what you're saying. Like, they needed a scene somewhere that was just like a non... I mean, it can't... I'm not saying it can't be a scene that moves the story ahead, but like something where everything just settled down for a moment to where they could just have a moment, right? Because they kind of need that.
Something that creates that connection, because it wasn't quite there. I mean, we needed that moment kind of like in Rocky. But like after the beat, like the beat where Rocky's like, I want to take you out on a date, like, because you see her, he goes into the pet store, he does his thing, and she's all shy and timid, but then the next time she agrees to go out with him, and then you have that date moment. You kind of needed something like that, but obviously you'd have to set up that there's been some grieving time for her, because literally it goes like Monday.
Well,
he crashes into the fence, meets the guy. Later that night, his ghosts haunt him so that he can get out of having to pay the bills for repairing the fence.
And that's the thing, is she's
and then the
clearly
next
not
day,
happy
her
with
husband's
him.
dead.
I mean, they do a pretty good job of showing that he's an asshole. She doesn't really, she's not really in love with him anymore. But you're right, and what they should have done, script, at least this is the way I see it. I don't know, you probably disagree with me, but like, I think you're right. But what they should have done is had it before that, before he realized she was married. They should have had a meet cute scene where he was doing something earlier in the film before the scene where he runs. He should have met the two of them separately.
Yeah.
Right. And then that would have made that scene when he first walks in and oh shit, that's his wife, kind of a thing. It would have made it a little bit more awkward for that moment. But like, that's where you could have had a meet cute with them before that, where she didn't realize she was married to this asshole, the same asshole he fucked up the fence in, which is kind of a running joke.
She's a doctor. There's
that's what I mean. Yeah.
Thing where basically, let's say she's at the hospital and Bannister's there because he's hires out his services. He takes money so that the survivors of those that have died in the hospital bed can say their last words to them. And, you know, he does it and he's doing it legit, but he's trying to take the cash out of it. And she thinks he's a kind of a little bit of a con, but he's doing something sweet that's helping this grieving person. And
I can see.
And then that's as the ghost like goes up the tunnel, which only he can see. And then, you know, he doesn't even. And once he leaves, he just completely washes his hands of it, like the asshole that he kind of is.
There's one other thing you could do, because out of nowhere I noticed this. And near the end of the film, the mother says, "Get me Frank Bannister." They should have had a scene where he showed up at the house before then when she was there.
Yeah, like could have been.
Like he was just trying to nose around and get into.
Or maybe he's there because of the weird ghost actions that the grandma saw. And be like, get him out.
And she thinks he's just there for whatever, and then that's where she kind of learns a little bit about him. But they have like a moment before that when they're coming up to the house or something. See, anything like that you could have done. I agree with you. You needed just that little bit more to kind of give him an attachment to where later on he does feel bad for doing all this shit, and it makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah, just to get them to meet on their own terms before, and then she may not even get his name. The card goes up there. The guy comes in. He's like, "Oh my God, it's you!" It's like, "What were you doing at the other house?" "Oh, you know, just what I'm doing here, routine exorcism." You know, and he just, just play into it.
Because out of nowhere, the mother says that later on. It's like, I guess because he's the town
paranormal
exorcist or whatever, But like, like at the same time, it's like there's never been a connection between the characters before.
Exactly. Yeah. It's kind of weird, but that would make great sense. Like he's going, like there's the other part too, that you have a double meaning for the scene where he's there exercising the demon or what have you. And then you realize, say after the house where he's complaining to his fellow ghost partners, like you weren't even like, just like with the other house, I get there, I do my thing, you're not there. And you're not even having no tables are moving, no plates are floating down. I look like an idiot. And then they'd be like, "We weren't at the other house." Like, what?
Exactly. Yeah. See,
well,
there you go.
Forget it. I got my money. Like,
he just kind of overlooks it at that point. Exactly. Because that would still build a little bit more of the mystery there too. But as it is, it's still
realize that he does this as a con, but that one time that we saw him at first, we think, oh, was that a con too? And then he mentions. And then, over at D. Wallace's house, they're like, "But that wasn't us, Frank. We would have told you beforehand." He's like, "Oh, yeah." and
actually, you could have added a little bit more to the mystery, because what you could have said is you had Frank go, "Yeah, your daughter called me." And she's like, "Get the hell out of here," kind of thing. Because then that sets up the mother to be more mean again, because especially if the Trini's character believes the mother is the killer all that time, or bad, and then she sees him sees her throw Frank out like that, especially considering the daughter was already trying to call for some kind of help, you know what I mean, like some kind of thing, like it could have been.
She already called the other doctor, right? So,
and really and then it turns out to be is the daughter was just trying to set Frank up, is what it was, because the whole
Oh,
thing
that'd be
was a
cool.
setup for him to beginning, remember?
Yeah.
So that's why she knows, and that's another reason why, because the mother found the fucking knife. We know that, right? Unless she planted it in there. That's something they never told us exactly. Was it she found the knife and she hid it so she could protect her daughter? Or did she put it in there to plant it on her mother so that the doctor thought that the mother did it? They never really say, right? And Peter
Yeah.
never is clear about that either. So unless he says it in the commentary, because he doesn't say it in the making of it, he brings it up, but he doesn't say what it's about. Just like I'm not sure if they lose the house so much as I thought he was rebuilding at the end. That was my interpretation, is that
Well,
he
I
was
mean,
not
where do you
going.
get the 15 grand from? Because you already know that Lucy, the doctor, lost 16,000 in a bad investment that her
That's
husband took
true.
from her. So it's like,
But
that's
she already has a house, so there's plausibilities there. Like I can find a dozen reasons how it could have happened. But no, I get where you're coming from.
yeah.
There is some little things here and there that and it kind of weird. It reminds me of Beetlejuice because I watched that again recently too, and I'm like watching the movie. I'm like, there's like a half hour in the beginning of this movie that's missing.
Probably. It
Like
feels that
there's
way,
no
yeah.
setup whatsoever for these characters, the main two characters, and you don't even get an idea of what relationships certain people have with people. But it's not as bad here. But I see what you're saying. It's a very similar thing here to where Fran and Peter just like, we got to get into this story, and again, that's maybe where the title doesn't fit so well because a large portion of the front end is what's chopped out, and that's where a lot of the frightening comes in.
Yeah.
um because then later on, that's when he kind of realizes the other stuff that's going on, because that's a big portion of the story, and the movie is already almost 2 hours long as it is, so I can see where that was a problem and they had to kind of trim down in the beginning. So
It is. I do like how they use the husband of Ray to sort of provide exposition about what's going on,
yeah,
and the fact that he's refusing to acknowledge that he's dead for so long, even
it's a
after
good
he
way to
sees
get
his
a lot of
body in the
the
grave.
ghost rules and stuff out of the way. Yeah.
Yep. And how, like, once a year, like if you don't take the tunnel the first time, you have to wait a whole year before it comes back again to get you. So that's interesting. So you see a lot of people, and you understand why there's a lot of ghosts that are still hanging around on the mortal plane, because they're just not ready to cross over.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like how they do a pretty good job of setting up the rules and how they work. And the only thing they kind of fudge a little bit is, um I like it, like, the movie Ghost, where they have that really great scene where Patrick Swayze goes to the subway ghost to
Yeah,
learn how to actually physically move things. Like in this, like you just kind of seems like you just kind of figure it out as a ghost. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like they just kind of let it go. Like it just kind of happens. And because even it's clearly the same kind of rules though, because like it always happens like when there's heightened emotions or whatever. But the other ghosts, that's clearly like the whole thing is they pick things up and they move things around, and he has a whole pattern of did the table move clockwise, and did the bed move up and down, and
and how the
so
ghosts hurt their back lifting the bed
yeah.
up. I'm like, you're dead. How do you have feelings like that?
Well, that's of course just just the humor of it all, and then but
Yeah,
again, you kind of see that with the judge, because as he's drying up, right, he's becoming frail, and and all that kind of business. So I mean, there's kind of a thing to it where it's like, I guess that's the penance you pay, is if you don't go through the light, eventually you're just going to waste away into nothing, I guess, and never see the other side. I suppose that's the the only other option.
yeah. It looks that way. I mean, the other
Yeah,
part
I
too,
don't
which
know.
is also very interesting, and they didn't really explain this in the rules, is that when Frank becomes the ghost for a second time, and he wraps his hand around D Wallace and then takes her soul out of her body, like how does like we don't get how that works exactly. Like we know you can
Yeah,
squeeze the heart and do something to the physical, but how do you do the spiritual part? Like I didn't grasp that entirely. That I mean, and that's what made it feel like a very Tales of the Crypt style story, because they would do um, quick resolutions of that type in their TV specials and in their movies. They're just kind of like, okay, it's time to end this thing. Here's the quick
yeah. This
resolution
does
type of
have a
thing.
very pilot episode kind of feel to it,
Yeah,
because I believe that's what it was meant to do. Is like, because when it was, there was a point where they were going to say it was going to be its own spin-off series on its own, like the Frighteners, Tales from the Crypt presents the Frighteners. And I would imagine it would just be him and Lucy every week doing like a routine, haunting kind of situation. and this was just the big story to kick it off. But that never came to be, of course. But and not that Peter ever talked about having any ideas going beyond this, but I could see where the potential was there for this to be a series, right? Like it's built on that idea that you could keep going with stories in this way.
Oh yeah, like they wouldn't even just be localized to that town. They'd probably travel to other places, and
Yeah.
she'd have the legitimacy behind her as having an actual like medical degree, and then he's just, I'm an architect, but I can see ghosts.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it is what it is, but it worked.
I wonder, would because Jeffrey Combs' character, he's a ghost now. Would he go start haunting the cults that tortured him for years?
He's hanging around with the sheriff. He's
Yeah,
haunting him.
looks always looks always disappointed.
I'm sure that'd have been funny if they would have been able to do it as a series. I'm sure that character would have come back quite often just to piss.
Well, I mean, you'd have to have some ghost allies to replace Chai McBride and
Yeah.
the other guy.
Well, I'm sure if it was going to turn out to be a series, they probably wouldn't have killed them. Or the setup is that from here on out, they no longer do the frightening thing. They just do
They just
actual
solve the
investigations.
hauntings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I would imagine was the initial idea. But yeah, so we covered pretty much most of what we wanted to talk about. Now the reception we did get into a little bit, but getting to that point, yeah, the movie did not do well in theaters, but it did find its way on video and cable, and it does have a bit of a cult following. As we see here, we have over 100 of you guys watching because I'm sure you're a fan of the film, so please hit that like button. I see Terminal says, I'm glad they approved you for a second season. Definitely more deserving than Batwoman. Well, thank you for that. Yes, we fought hard for the second season.
Oh yeah.
And then Orville Nation sent us a super sticker. Let me see if I can go back and see what it is. It is a pear guy with a fist bump. Thank you, PJ. Appreciate that. Always glad to see you. And we have, I think that's it for the super stickers and super chats. But yeah, I'm curious, what would you guys have called this movie? Because I think going into the reception factor, I think that's part of the problem was the title. The title, I think, does not give you a real good idea of what the movie is. The promotional campaign, I would say, was a 50-50. The trailers, I think, did a pretty good job of selling the Ghostbuster aspect of the movie, but
Mhm.
not the other aspect.
No, because it's really like the Reaper of Fairwater, right? Like
Yeah.
that's kind of what it's about.
But they need something that's catchy. I get it. The Frighteners is something that, catches your attention, but even this poster like this behind us, I wouldn't say that was the best thing to sell the movie on.
That image doesn't even resonate in the film at all. Like that's
Not
the thing.
really.
It's a good scary image, but it doesn't convey the same connotations that say the Ghostbuster with the red
Right.
no sign does, or like that. I mean, you look at that image and you think Poltergeist more than you do the Frighteners.
To be honest, you know what I would have done, just to be kind of tongue in cheek? I would have done something like Back to the Future, but with the two ghosts behind him.
as an image, yeah.
Yeah. Because the video cover that they have now for the DVD and Blu-ray sucks.
Yeah,
I'd rather go back
outside
to
of his
this, but
what is that? It's not like it's like his bug, like just hanging out from his bug, and then the two ghosts behind him.
guys behind it's just like a shot from the movie that they cobbled together as a image. It's really bad because believe it or not, they must not have done too much promotional imagery for this movie. I couldn't find much. It was not the easiest one of my ventures in trying to find imagery for.
No, I know exactly how the cover would be now because you said the Back to the Future style. But instead of Michael J. Fox looking at his watch, he's got a piece of toast in one hand and a bite of it in his mouth, and then the two ghosts are behind him because he's always eating while he's on the phone, right?
Yeah, something like that maybe. And then
and then the house in the background, and then
Yeah.
all the other stuff going on, like the Grim Reaper and the overhead by the title.
Now there's somebody did a modern version of it. Looks like Schiotti in 2020. This is not too bad. It's the one I used for the thumb today. But here's the full image so you can actually see the whole thing. That looks more like a Shout Factory Blu-ray cover though.
Yeah. It
I
really
mean,
does, but that's a little bit better too.
a little bit better, but
It
still
also
doesn't
kind of
have
spoils the
something.
movie.
Yeah.
The
Unfortunately, it doesn't
one
have something to sell the film
Dee
with yet.
Wallace's thing spoils the movie right away.
Big time, big time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I like the art, but not to sell the film. That's the thing, is I feel like that's where this movie failed. First of all, I think Peter's right. It probably would have played better around October time when it didn't have the summer films to compete with. But I'm
Yeah.
sure Universal at that time, I don't know what else came out that year, but maybe they didn't have something to fill that spot. And
They
the,
didn't, but that's also one of the big missteps that a lot of studios have is sometimes with their horror films, they either do them at the beginning of the year or they do them after the Halloween season or too early before the Halloween season. And one of the fun facts of the Saw franchise is that they always released them around the weekend of Halloween, and they always did gangbusters because that's
yeah,
what people were in the mood for. And that's why you got 8 of them back to back with like 4 months of production and turnaround before they were ready to hit the theaters. Like they were quickly made films, and they always made way more money than they deserved to make. But just because of their tone and the fact that they said, "Yep, if you want to go in for scares and gore and blood, you got to do it on Halloween because that's where people pretty much drop their guard for that and want to be scared." Um, and yeah, I think it was. I think Universal made the big mistake of not throwing that movie then, and I think the extra month and a quarter of time between their initial release and that Halloween release probably would have helped Jackson hone out some of the finer things to probably have allowed it to make its money back, or at least not end with a $26 million take
yeah. Because I don't
from
think it
box
really would have
office.
had anything in October to compete with, because Scream didn't come out till December.
That's right. And Scream also probably should have came out in October as well.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it did better in January, and that's why a lot of times after that they started releasing horror films in January
Yep.
for some reason. Plus, it was like you could get the video out by Halloween too. That was another reason. But no, there was
But
actually another film, believe it or not, that was meant to be a Tales from the Crypt movie that had the same fate as the Frighteners. Do you know what movie that was?
no, probably not because it was the 90s.
I guess it got it because it moved off way early on, and you can see why. From Dusk Till Dawn, I guess, was the other one that they were
Oh
looking at.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Rodriguez and Tarantino partner with
Yep.
George Clooney and Selma
Yep.
Hayek.
Yep. But that one they took away early on because they could see it wasn't going to happen. And
That
Miramax,
is
of
very
course,
much a Tales from the Crypt style movie too. The way
Dimension.
that it has a
Yes.
complete tonal shift halfway through, that is pure HBO horror special.
Yeah, I found that out in my research for this because I'm watching the thing, and Peter Jackson's version is a very sanitized version. Like I said, the rest of the stories on the Bordello Blood Blu-ray, and you can find there's an article or two out there. There's like one I specifically found was like movies that were meant to be Tales from the Crypt movies, and those two were the main two. So yeah.
Yeah.
With that though, I didn't see any more. Well, we had one more super chat here. No, that's the one we got, so we're good to go. Was there? I didn't see any serial ghosts. Okay, that's not too great. That's the thing, is I don't know if you could find anything better than the Frighteners. I don't know. It's kind of the Frightening, which is very similar.
Yeah.
Um, hmm. Oh yeah, we forgot. Well, we did mention Arlie Emery, but yeah, he's great in it
Oh,
too.
I mean, he plays, the drill
Arlie
sergeant
Emery.
character, which he does very well.
I love the out. Speaking of, I love the outtakes on this too. If you ever get a chance to check the outtakes out, it's hilarious.
How
There's
many
one,
times does Michael J. Fox refer to John Astin as Doc?
yeah, it's at least 3 or 4 times in the thing. It's like Doc. God damn it, I called him Doc again. Doc, fuck, I did it again. He's like, what movie is this? Shit. At least when he's on the green screen, I can understand, But when you're
Yeah.
driving that fucking car and compared to the DeLorean, it's like, come on, dude.
I mean, I do love the gag of how every time he's driving, he's getting off road, he's knocking down fences and mailboxes. He's putting that car through the ringer, but doing tons of property damage all the time. It's
Michael
quite.
J. Fox is a bad driver in every movie. You ever notice that? Like, he's hit, I don't know how many fences, at least 3 now in movies.
Killed a scarecrow in a tree, in a pine tree.
Yeah, in a pine tree, yeah. He's always a bad driver. He always gets in an accident, it seems like. Yeah, the problem Fright Night was taken. That kind of works, but not quite still. That's still, it works best for Fright Night.
The sixth nonsense, maybe? Because he's a con man.
Actually, considering that came out just before The Sixth Sense, it would have probably worked better for this. It would have worked for this movie too, possibly.
Yeah.
Because you got the number factor and all that stuff in it. Gosh, I don't know what you could call it, but I noticed earlier Sean Stackhouse brought up John Cusack. I could see him playing the lead role.
Oh yeah, he would have done the exact same performance actually.
Basically, yeah. And Christopher Lloyd would have been a cute cameo, but yeah, sadly we didn't get one. But that's probably because they shot it in New Zealand. That's why. Peter Jackson even cut his own cameo out, most of it.
Yeah, he's the one that gets knocked by Michael J. Fox when he gets out of
Yeah, when he's dressed like a punk rocker, which he said is hilarious because that's the one day he didn't realize, nobody told him ahead of time, that the press was showing up.
Yeah.
So for the longest time, everybody thought Peter Jackson, the director of, these rancid horror films, was like this goth.
Looked like this normally.
This goth. All tons of like lip rings and nose ring and eyelash or eyeliner and leather. Like, oh, this guy's the next Clive Barker.
Would be funny. Death Con, because he's
Death Con, that works.
A con artist,
works.
Yeah.
Dead Wrong, almost. Well, yeah, that's the thing. Then you get too many of the, like, yeah, I don't know. God, that's the problem, is there's not a lot of good titles here, so it's not like I don't blame them for going with it, but Ghost Detective, that's a little scared shitless, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think the other part too is, I mean, the movies, it's very simple on the villain side of things. It's the characters figuring it out is a little bit convoluted. It takes them a while, and I say justifiably so, because you have to sort of get your hands on the Reaper villain first before you can kind of figure out what the heck's that is really this Busey guy. But yeah, like it's I mean, it's a fun film, and the character work is really great. And Michael J. Fox, when he's not having to wrestle with a carpet that's being CGI matted to look like a carpet, he does really great job performing wise. Like when he's in that first interrogation scene with Jeffrey Combs, you can tell like he is in that place where he's thinking about his wife and everything that's happened so far and the people that he's cared about, and he's just given up at this point. And you feel it coming from him. Yeah. God, yeah, Dee Wallace was great in this.
Yeah, I didn't find that's the thing, is there was not a lot of really good. Like there's some, but not a ton.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Is that a photo? That's from the shot?
Yeah, it's from
it's gotta be an outtakes part, right?
Yeah, well they used it for, this is one of the few promotional items I remember when the movie came out.
Yeah.
In fact, I think this might have been used for an alternate poster in some places. Because I think that was the most of that scene's cut out, because that's from the scene where I think she was trying to get through the door or whatever. And, yeah. But no, unfortunately, it didn't do well. But the rest went well for Peter. We know from there he went to strength to strength, pretty much.
Yeah, it wasn't long until he started working on the Lord of the Rings.
Paranormal Inc. I kind of like that. That kind of works. But you still, but Script Doctor's right. That still kind of goes along with the Frighteners, to where they're not really doing much frightening. It's only like 2 scenes. They really
I guess. Well, what was Bartlett's, was given like a killer name? Maybe just something like that.
Ooh, Beyond
Bartlett's
the Grave
back. I don't know.
Beyond the Grave kind of works.
Beyond the Grave. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I don't know. Ghosting is okay. I think Beyond the Grave is probably one of the better ones so far, though. But I can see where it would have been a difficult conversation where they sat down and probably tried figuring out. It's like, well, the Frighteners is the only thing we've ever really called it. So, But yeah, so with that, I don't know if there was anything more to say about the movie. It was definitely an A-rated B movie in my opinion, but at the same time, it's also a B-rated A movie, so it can go both
It
ways.
oscillates between both because it's got the budget of an A-rated film, a horror film, at least of that time period, but it did not receive the following until much later. So
Yeah, and you're right that it's not a completely perfect film. It does have flaws, although the film does manage to let you look past them by being breakneck speed, basically.
it
Um,
really is. It's a compressed time frame. It doesn't feel like the director's cut and even the original one doesn't feel like an hour 50 or 2 hour film.
no, and even the director's cut, which was basically the version that was cut down. I don't know why they call it the director's cut, but it's the extended version, really.
Yeah.
That's just the version that was cut down for theatrical version, just for running time by the end. Um, but no, like I like it probably a little bit more than you do. It sounds like, but I acknowledge the flaws it has, but at the same time, I feel like it's one of those rare, damn near perfect films where almost everything uh, just fits. And regardless of how easy it is to figure out the mystery, I think it's just well crafted. That first time, I didn't exactly see it going there per se, and they
I
do
think the
such a good
mystery
job.
is actually quite well crafted. It's all a bunch of little things that kind of add up over the course of the film before it actually, at least before it makes me go, oh, like it. When I watch this film, I don't start questioning the things of what's happening until over an hour in, because so far it's given me answers to the questions that I have. It's once you get past the hour, you're like, okay, I'm kind of having difficulty believing that these two have chemistry to each other, and that at the comical medieval times ripoff restaurant. And it's like we have the one contradiction where the guy's like, yeah, we I got reservations at our favorite place, but we've only really lived here for 3 months and we've been married for a few years. So it's like, what? How, is this? I don't get the context of that, but okay, I'll ignore it for now. Um, but then the breakneck speed right from that dinner to the rest of the movie, it's all like basically just one night, and it's a hectic one, and it's awesome
Yeah,
because it just one after another goes. Maybe there's kind of like a daybreak part because he spends the night in jail, and then it's the following morning, but it flows so smoothly from that point that it works. And it's an
yeah.
enjoyable one. Yeah.
Well, it's clearly like equal parts Ghostbusters meets The Mask, but it's constructed like an animated film. And I think that's part of the reason why it's so
It's
breakneck.
not as dense as Ghostbusters or The Mask, and I think that's
No,
probably why it's missing some of the character
could
relationship
be.
aspects
But
that I
like you get what
noticed.
I'm saying though, right?
Yeah,
Like it has this, and I think part of the reason is because at that time, like I said, the money is just getting chewed up on screen with the CGI. Unfortunately, things that you and I could do now on our home computer for nothing cost them a lot back then, because those
yeah,
ghosts were not easy to do, and it was really more so because Peter Jackson could have got away with doing it much easier, but he had to make them translucent. Like that was his big thing, and that was the big hard difficult part, not just making them translucent but doing all the goofy stuff like the mask. And that's why I bring in the mask, where them changing forms and getting spat out of a tailpipe or sliding down something, or getting chopped up and goofiness ensuing. Like the dog, for instance, is a great example where they started the picture with the plan to do it live action and in camera with a puppet, and that went out the door real fucking quick, because they're like, yeah, this is not going to work, not the way not what we need it to do, not to move the way we need it to move, and all that kind of stuff. And then Michael J. Fox on the other end is basically doing what and I bring in Roger Rabbit too as a part of it, is because he's basically doing what Bob Hoskins had to do, acting against most of the people in the movie not being there, and being pulled around and whipped around literally in some scenes. Like I can't believe he didn't break his hip and some other things, and all the times he got in these stunts, right? Because
yeah, because they basically strung him up for a couple of those
flung
shots.
him around, strung him up, like the scene where he's speaking of the dog, where he grabs the dog's tail. That's
Yeah,
him on a rope being pulled from the other side of the stage at full force. He hits the ground, no padding.
yeah.
like Motherfucker, how'd you do that? Like, this guy would do that shit, though. Like, that was the
Well,
thing
he
with
did
Michael
hit
J.
his head
Fox.
really hard
Yeah.
in Back to the Future when he fell from the tree.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's hurt himself quite a few times. I'm not saying he hasn't, but as far as actors go, like, that's something that people don't like. Everybody talks about Tom Cruise. Nobody ever talked about how much Michael J. Fox did his own stunts very often. And he likes doing that shit, though. That's the thing. He loves doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I guess maybe. I mean, I don't know many stunt men that are 5'3" to 5'6".
That could also be a problem.
So that might be.
Not just that, Michael J. Fox has a way that he moves in general, just like his,
He's a
and
very
it's part of
animated
his,
way.
and that's part of his physical comedy, right? Like, he's one of those last guys that I could say has a as a physical comedian just as much as a standard type comedian in a way.
Well, as a comedic actor, he knows how to
Yeah,
act with every part of his body. Like with Marty McFly, it's his shoulders and his hands a lot. Like he's doing the shoulder and hand stuff whenever he's moving, and he's also got his hips leading him in the way. And he kind of brings a little bit of that over to Bannister, but he tries to change it up a bit by like having the slouch and being like, okay, this is
yeah.
just me going through the motions because I'm this
Well,
guy who's just desperate for money to make ends meet while I'm not actually moving or growing in life, uh, which is what Bannister was like. And yeah, you do have that animated style to him.
well, not just that. He like, I mean, he gets his whole body into it, like you're saying. I mean, and that is part of the character. He puts like his own spin. It's like what Chevy Chase does, but only smoother,
Yeah,
right? It's the best way I can explain it because like Michael J. Fox has a different way of being clumsy than Frank Bannister does, right? And
yeah,
same thing with the character he has in Doc Holliday is a different way of being clumsy when he's doing it too. He has a way of doing it. It's kind of his shtick, you know. Like I don't know how he does it, but if you watch the movies, he has he brings a body language to the character, not just a voice and a way of acting, because he's so used to, we're so used to seeing him in certain kind of roles, to where this, you're right, like we brought up early on, this is a very different turn for Michael J. Fox at that time. He's not normally, he doesn't know, the closest he ever played to a character like this was probably in The Hard Way, and even then it was just more so, i'm I'm completely, he just completely unself-aware, or what do I want to put this, he's not self-aware at all of his surroundings or who he is or what he's doing in that movie. That's why he acts that way. To where here he's doing it on purpose with the con, right? Like that's a little different.
yeah.
But that's like the closest I can think of though. But even then, like my point is the character there is more innocent. Here he's not. That's the only big difference, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
Like
I'd
he has a
say.
childlike innocence of him in Hard Way is what I mean.
Okay, yeah.
Because he's all like, I'm gonna be a cop now, you know. That's another one that came out in this era that didn't do well. But I enjoy quite a bit. I don't know if you like that one or not, but
I don't think I've seen The Hard Way in a long time.
oh, it's a good one. I think that's one of his more underrated ones. But anyway, back to this one. Again, in the end, though, I guess I would say it's an A-rated B movie, but you'd probably say it's a B-rated A movie. I bet, but I could be wrong.
I mean, well, I mean, it's a well-made movie, but yeah, it just it's more on the cult side. So yeah, it'd probably be a B-rated A movie.
Yeah. All right. Well, what do you guys think out there? That's what matters. Tell us what you think, and let us know what other movies you want us to see and talk about. We haven't decided what the next one's going to be yet. But I think we might keep that one as a surprise this time. Usually we let you guys pick, but I think we're going to keep that one under wraps till next time. I'm going to talk to script about it behind the scenes. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. Make sure make sure it maintains the quality of all the previous episodes, and it's a good one
Yes.
to
I have some
to
ideas.
examine. Hmm.
So until then, unless there was anything else you had to say about the Frighteners.
No, I think we did it quite well, and it's a movie that we recommend watching because it is fun.
Yes, a lot of fun. A lot of fun. And ironically, it's rumored for 4K. We just found that out this week. And that was totally, obviously, just happenstance that, because you and I had picked this movie last season, technically.
Yeah, at
So
the end of last season we picked it.
So like it's not like we planned this one off of that news. No, that just happened to drop this week. So looking forward to that. Hopefully it has a good 4K. I'm kind of concerned with all the CGI effects, but we'll see.
Yeah, we will.
I don't know if he'll probably scrub the shit out of it too. Like he did with Lord of the Rings. We'll see. All right, gang. Thank you so much for being here on this A-rated B movie. We appreciate it. Take care of yourselves and each other. Check out Script Doctor's channel. He does stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, and tomorrow morning, or actually noon.
Tomorrow
my time
afternoon,
anyway.
it's on Scribe Light's channel. We'll be talking pitching a fake sequel to A New Nightmare. Yeah.
Now, are we
See,
doing a new Nightmare sequel, or are we doing a Nightmare on Elm Street sequel in general?
I think it's a New Nightmare sequel because it's based off the little tweet exchange that you two had a few weeks ago.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we'll have to.
So again, there are some rules that are there, and then there are some newer rules that the New Nightmare brought in that have to be addressed.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. So be sure to follow us on Twitter and see the link and join us over there tomorrow afternoon.
Yes, please do that. Till then, let us know what you think of the film and take care of yourselves and each other. Goodbye.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.